Welcome to the broadcast tonight, a conversation with Kenneth Branagh. He was born in Belfast, educated in London at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. He has gone on to do almost everything you can at a very young age. He has made 2 films from Shakespearean works, Much Ado About Nothing and Henry V. He has starred as Hamlet on the stage in London. He has made other films, and he has created his own theater company called Renaissance. And he now has a new film called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, in which he stars along with Robert De Niro, and I'm very pleased to have him back at this table. Welcome back.
Thanks, Charlie. Nice to be back.
Good to see you. Tell me about how this project came to you, why you wanted to do it, before we talk about, your own ideas about it and the casting of it and what you hope to accomplish with the film.
Well, Francis Ford Coppola's company, American Zoetrope, had been developing an idea for a new movie version of Frankenstein. I think originally with Francis intending to direct, but he then directed Dracula, and I think had done his Gothic movie. And so he and the TriStar Pictures sent it to me, and I said, well, this has been done before, hasn't it? I mean, a lot of Frankenstein movies. And then I read the book, which I had never read before. And,
this is Mary Shelley's book?
Which is very surprising. And if, as like me, the only knowledge you have of Frankenstein is really Boris Karloff black and white movies that are, brilliant in themselves, but now melodramatic and much corrupted by the comic versions of them, the Addams Family and the Munsters and all sorts of perversions since then. It's a big surprise when you see this novel, which is really very different. There's a very strong personal story there, a love story. It's about families, dysfunctional families, about fathers and sons, fathers who reject sons, and very much a sense of, instead of a monster movie and a mad scientist, you've got a father and son and a living being, a creature. We decided to call him rather than a monster to make it less generic and more personal. And overall, I mean, the big shock to me was to discover how contemporary it felt, given that what Frankenstein attempts, we're so much closer to being able to achieve ourselves with every day producing some other genetic advance. Yeah. So I read it and thought, this is a fantastic story to do now. It couldn't be more topical.
Yeah, it is, with all the things that are going on in genetic engineering and all the things that we're understanding about how to beat disease by being able to exchange genes and all of that whole world of medical science. The other interesting thing about it, for me also, was the sense that you do go back to the original, because at the time that she wrote the book, it was about 1812, somewhere around that time.
1816.
These ideas of a different nature were in the air at that time.
I mean, they were about to face the onset of the Industrial Revolution, and so transport, communications were going to be revolutionized, and I mean, the world was about to be transformed in a way that I think frightened people, and they didn't, they were scared, they didn't know what was going to happen, and that greatest possible advance that man could make would be perhaps to create life using these new technologies, electricity.
Yes, cheat death by creating life.
Exactly, and I think that in a sense, there's the same kind of thing in the air for us. We're at the brink of a technological communications revolution, genetics revolution that is unimaginable. I mean, if you 20 years ago, what's happening at the moment was unpredictable. Now, I think in the same way we're debating the same kind of thing. We're scared, and I suppose we're now very much nearer to that point of saying, well, has man really got to the point where he's got to turn back before he plays God and makes a terrible mess of it, just like Victor Frankenstein?
So you agree to do it, and you get to chance. You're directing for Francis Ford Coppola, who has been one of your heroes, I guess, along with Martin Scorsese.
And, you got it.
And who else is on that list?
A lot of people: Woody Allen and then all the greats from the past. The David Leans and the John Fords and all of that.
I want to come back to this, but I saw you. I happened to be sitting next to you at dinner the other night, unbeknownst to you, and you came in and you were with Woody Allen. Are you going to work on something with him, or?
I happened to be just having supper with him. I just been to see a picture with him, and we were just chewing the cud, as it were.
What do you talk about when you two are together?
Well, we had a very interesting talk about acting, directing, and control of movies and shooting and reshooting, and how it works and stuff. It's interesting because there's not actually many people who do what he does and I do, and Clint Eastwood does it, and some actors do it, but they don't do it very often. So it's a kind of, you have a lot of specialized little things to talk about.
Do you still think of yourself as an actor who's directing, or are you moving more into thinking of yourself as a director who also acts?
No, I think I still feel primarily an actor. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. Or maybe just as a filmmaker, full stop. This film had a performance by me in it of a part, the vision of which was so integral to the vision of the movie. It's a Victor Frankenstein who, as distinct from other versions, is not a hysterical, neurotic, aesthetic kind of madman. He's a dangerously sane man who is physically well put together and is intellectually well put together, and uses all those sort of gifts and skills and puts them at the disposal of this attempt to do the right thing. I mean, he goes wrong, but he is a good man, basically, a kind of who makes this kind of Faustian bargain with the devil. And so the performance and the effect that it had on the overall impact of the film, which was my responsibility as a director, sort of intermeshed. So I didn't really see the difference in a sense. I was just filmmaking, happened to be.
All right, but let me come back to you and the conversation you and Woody are having. What's it like to be there on the set and to be I mean, this is a huge $30-40 million film, yes?
Indeed, yeah.
I mean, you've got something on the line here.
Yep. Yeah.
What do you have on the line?
Well, you've got a lot of people working for you, a lot of people who are putting faith in you. You've got a movie company that's writing a very large check and saying, we think you can do it. You've got Francis Ford Coppola, who, is obviously putting his reputation to some extent behind you. And, you have an obligation not to panic and also an obligation to yourself to try and enjoy it, and try and, invest the spirit of making it.
How do you do both? I mean, you are central to this film. I mean, you in most of the scenes.
Yeah.
And therefore, you've got to... You also got to be worrying about what do you say to Robert De Niro, who's just gone through 12 hours of makeup as he gets...
Sure.
How does one do both?
Well, as I say, you either have a really strong, passionate reaction to the work. In this case, there was a massively strong reaction to the story. I thought this is a great story, that if I'm going to work on this for 2 years, which is what it's taken, then it needs to give me a great deal if it's going to sustain me, if I'm going to be nourished by the subject matter. Well, it's about everything. It's about life, it's about death, it's about birth, it's about absolutely
so you can deal with all the themes, both.
Exactly, you're in there. It's about families, it's about love affairs, it's about betrayal, it's about rejection, about parental responsibility. It keeps you thinking. So that feeds you, and that's like your base fuel. If it's just a blow 'em up, shoot 'em up action movie, 2 years is going to send you potty.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like nothing behind it, you know.
You worked on nothing between the beginning of this and the end of this?
I was actually finishing playing Hamlet when I began this, so I went from playing one man obsessed with death to a man who rejected death.
All right, take to the case of Victor Frankenstein now. I mean, and what you saw when you read the book. Why is he obsessed with doing this? Why is he obsessed with creating? He goes away to college to be a physician, but he's different. And he becomes obsessed because of a friendship with Professor Waldman.
Yeah, and I think what he carries into that is a rage and a frustration that a lot of us can understand, which is he loses his mother in unfortunate circumstances. In childbirth, she gives birth to his younger brother, and he feels that sensation anybody in the grip of an intense feeling of grief or the wake of bereavement feels when they say, if there is a God, how could they take this person? If there is a God, how would he give this kid cancer? And there's a tremendous rage at how things are ordered, and he feels that, but unusually for this dangerous, gifted man, he uses that rage and resentment to try and do something better. He believes that it's man's duty to try and improve things, to involve things, to do it better, and to, in his case, try and eradicate disease and try and cheat death, try and stop this arbitrary process by which wonderful people like his mother.
And then he goes away, and what happens to him? He goes to the university, and he's there, and all of a sudden he sees this Professor
Waldman, played by John Cleese, a haunted man who's been into the territory that Victor Frankenstein wishes to explore, and says, don't go down that road. That way madness lies.
And why does he say that?
Well, I think because he has seen that when you try and create life, it's such an incredible concept. It involves tremendous arrogance and a sort of exhilaration that is deceptive, because what you get at the end of it, you can't possibly predict. A parallel that we used was with Oppenheimer and Einstein, who described the process of trying to solve the equation of splitting the atom as so exciting as to blind them completely to the consequences of what that weapon could produce.
Walking to the top of that mountain and conquering it.
It's so thrilling. It's so thrilling to think that you've done what nobody else has done before. Then, as Victor Frankenstein finds, if he could just have the formula written down, that would be fine. But he doesn't just have that. He has a living, breathing being who, in his hands, he's produced as rather grotesque because he's put him together from bits of other human beings, and is now utterly dependent on him. And it's shocking. He hadn't bargained on that one.
He hadn't bargained on the fact that, like a child, this thing he's created is dependent on him for what happens to him.
Exactly, and he's created a monster. I mean, already I think he starts.
Well, who says he's a monster?
Well, Victor Frankenstein. It's interesting. You know, what would have happened if this creature had been born beautiful? You know, what would Frankenstein have done then? But he finds him, and this is a theme from the book. Shelley starts immediately to say that Victor Frankenstein realizes he's hideous, he's grotesque, he's created something that isn't going to be acceptable in the world, and it proves to be the case, because not only does his father reject him, when the creature goes out into the world and helps a perfectly ordinary, loving family who would ordinarily be helpful to strangers, they see him, they see these stitches, these scars, and his size, and they reject him. And alas, they fall prey to the usual basic human instincts to be suspicious of people who don't look like us, you know, and usually to be, unfortunately, cruel. And, you know, this book and the story is partly a plea for tolerance, I think.
But here is the interesting thing to me, and clearly you've thought about this, is that Victor Frankenstein has created somebody that just wants to be loved. I mean, that's the nature of the creature, which never has a name.
Yes, it never has an identity, and it does. It simply wants that.
Just wants to be loved. And in the end, he says, just give me someone who looks bad like I do,
exactly.
and let me go away and be loved, and I'll get out of your hair.
It's such a simple plea. It's so beautifully done. He says, I just need a friend.
Why couldn't Frankenstein do that?
Well, in the end, he realizes that that's what the creature deserves. In a book and in the scene we have the two of them face each other with this problem in the film, he is moved to some extent, but it's too late. I mean, in the book and in the film, it's a little more implied in the book. He begins to be scared because what he realizes, he's unleashed a series of events over which he has no control and which are utterly volatile and unpredictable. So he makes him a mate. So maybe they have kids. So what, we have a race of monsters? I mean, he just can't get his head around that possibility, and he has to stop it. He can't go through with it, and that becomes part of the tragedy because neither of them can find peace.
All right. Let me talk about casting because I want to see some clips here. You as Dr. Victor Frankenstein, what did you want to, I mean, tell me, because it's more interesting with, I think, De Niro, but what did you want to, tell me the sort of slant you took on Victor Frankenstein.
To make him a good man, to make him somebody who was trying to do the right thing, who goes wrong, who realizes
he gets lost in his obsession.
Lost in his obsession, and there becomes a classic kind of problem that I think anybody can identify with, whether they've built a monster or not, which is the clash between obsession about work and a loving relationship or home, ambition versus family, obsession versus love. And especially there he is supported brilliantly and loved by a fantastic woman. We see him put all of that at risk as he gives way to obsession and a certain kind of arrogance and vanity, which I think is in the nature of these great men. The vanity is
scientific discovery?
Yeah, the vanity is
or
in him
creating life itself.
Yeah, in him doing it, in him assuming God's position. I think these are dangerous men. It's not too ridiculous a parallel to look at someone like Hitler, an extraordinary man who, you know, and Napoleon.
Who you did a film, which is a play?
Exactly, the Life of Napoleon. These are brilliant men who you just think if all of their gifts, incredible gifts for leadership and vision, could have just been channeled into good all the time, the world may have been changed for the better. Instead, they always give way to that vanity. Napoleon and Hitler just couldn't stop at
they had to go
Russia.
to Moscow.
Exactly,
yeah, right.
And both got messed in the same way. Victor Frankenstein has that kind of thing. For all of his good qualities, for all of his passion and his vision, he loses that. And I think it's something we recognise. It's very male.
Well, how about very Kenneth?
Well, well, I haven't built any monsters yet.
No, but you're obsessed by, it seems to me, to know a little about you. I mean, you are a workaholic. You're driven by your work self-description. Driven, passionate. Yes?
Yes, sure. No,
obsessed
I agree with that,
exploring every realm of the creative expression of performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I mean, that's well put, actually. It is that thing of trying to test it all out. This film was a film which took me into areas of film technology I'd never had to deal with before, special effects and huge sets and all sorts of storms at sea sequences and sequences up in the Alps. There was that side of it, plus the attempt to try and, you got a big popular movie, if you like, a mainstream kind of idea, a page-turner as a book, and one which I felt, and anybody who reads the book, I think, feels works on many different levels. The challenge to do that was something that drove me into doing the show and drove me also into feeling that playing Victor Frankenstein was not a stupid thing to do with that kind of project, because the one bled into the other, and it wasn't hard when you said action. I mean, you were still the mad, concentrated filmmaker, now playing the mad, concentrated doctor.
All right. Yeah. Then the one that is, I think, a stroke of brilliance, which was Robert De Niro. Was it a hard sell?
No, I think he was a little concerned up front that it wouldn't be, he wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be, he put him in, you know, the Karloff makeup and have bolts in the neck, and he wanted to know that it was going to be very different in that way, that we would have a very distinct look from all the various melodramatic ones, the schlocky ones, the campy versions of this story. Once he knew that that was the case and could trust me over that, he then threw himself into it, and threw himself into it in the meticulous, detailed way that only he can do. And over about 9 months, I guess it was, before shooting started, we developed this makeup and this look for this extraordinary creation.
Which takes, I mean, whatever you use, it's like a 12-hour sitting for him?
For the full body makeup, he's born naked rather than in a convenient set of clothes on a slab, and this meant covering him completely from head to foot, because we designed a look which was a body made up from other body parts. A longer leg replacing one that was sick, a piece of jaw that's replaced, an eye replaced, an arm replaced, all ill-fitted so that the joints and everything are stiff and painful. There's lots of stitching. So there were, you know, he talked to surgeons, he looked at, you know, coloured dictionaries of medical experiments. He talked to stroke victims about what happens when...
He did?
Yes. This is an investigative reporter when it comes to finding out what...
De Niro, when he looks into the nature of his own character, the character he's going to play.
Yes, and especially with something like this where the monster can be a generic thing, where you're supposed to maybe just come on and be frightening. He wanted something specific, to know if you had a leg being joined onto a torso and the leg is 3 days old and the torso is 2 days old, well, what's the difference in skin texture? What's the difference in the rate of decomposition? What does that mean in terms of the prosthetics? What if one's older? Should it be wrinkled? Where should it be wrinkled? How should it be joined to the hip? I mean, we went through all of this with diagrams and sketches. He worked out how to speak, as say, talking to stroke victims about how you know, how they relearn to talk after you know, they've been traumatized, and to come up with this patchwork man, this sort of look, which is a kind of cross between an accident victim and a convict, and one that looks painful and agonizing, and yet powerful, can be frightening at the same time. And once he'd done all that, as it were, he could be then actually very simple within it, and he is. He's a very simple actor.
You had to make sure that the audience could know it was Robert De Niro, otherwise why have Robert De Niro? Yes?
Exactly. So the crucial thing was to make sure that those very powerful eyes that he has were very clear. But I knew that he's a total actor, so he acts with his body as well, and he acts...
so even if you couldn't see the face, you, as a director and a student of this kind of thing, could tell it was De Niro?
Sure. I mean, I knew the way we would shoot it, that we would get into that face and see those eyes, and that also that
well, how do you do that so you get that? How do you say the way we would shoot it?
Well, I mean, just you've got to get
you've
got to get close, and it is lighting as well, and especially in the key dialogue scenes where he speaks, where unusually the creature speaks, and speaks so well, you need to know that you're going to see into the man's soul. And so, in a sense, something else that he did which helped us out, which was an ironic thing actually, was to plan those stages through the journey in the film of when the scars start to heal, in fact. And you notice through the film that actually he starts to become a little less horrific as time goes on. He starts to be more human, and once again there's that irony. If only Victor Frankenstein had waited for a bit, if only that family had waited for a bit, they could have seen that, listen, you know, after a while these things go away, or we get used to them. And, you know, we see the person inside, you know.
How, you had to make him likable, too, did you? I mean, because
I think, in a sense...
Is likable the right word? Or is it...
well, you had to identify with the creature. He's born. He has no particular propensity to be violent or evil. I mean, when he's born, is an innocent. We see his education in the world happen before our very eyes, and it parallels what happens in the book. After being rejected by his father, you see this creature, this thing, simply react to noise and to crowds and to people who, on seeing him, reject him. They throw things at him. He learns to hide. He learns to be wary of human beings. And all the time there's a sort of animal there rather than a fully articulate human being. Then you see a sort of education take place. He overhears the family speaking. He hears kids being taught to read. He gathers language. And you start to see the grown-up emerge and the possibilities emerge. And then once again, when he takes the opportunity to say, hello, you know, I think you won't like me because I'm ugly, but I really love you guys, they hit him again. And that's what turns him into the raging monster and this kind of tragic figure. I mean, there's a real journey to go on. It needed a great actor. It was wonderful to get him.
Tom Hulsey.
Yep.
Yeah. He's your friend, Henry.
Yes, indeed. And he's a wonderful actor. It was such a luxury to have him as the best friend, Henry Clerval, you know, who provides a great function for the audience in as much as he invites the right kind of humour.
He's the surrogate for the audience too, in a sense, is he?
He
not?
is.
Sort of, because here is the normal person with a great love for frivolity and humour, looking at his friend who's obsessed and wanting to be a friend, but a little bit.
Yeah, he's a witness to all that. The audience love him, and also he's the one who's at work and say, "If they pick the lighting up, would you?"
Yeah,
take it easy.
Right. And here's also the guy, the actor who beat you out for Amadeus too.
Way back, yes. Yeah, he did, and it's I must say it was funny to be together on this one. But we got on like a house on fire.
And here is another one. John Cleese as Professor Waldman. Waldman.
Yeah, he was great to have in a part like that, because again, it's an element that, just like having Robert in and just like doing it closer to the book, makes us feel that it's going to be a different version. And he provides this wonderful melancholy that, you know, I feel comedians have, this dark side to their nature. They're all depressives, I think, really, certainly crazy. And he
all humor, you think, somehow, some way, is connected to darkness or tragedy or unhappiness?
I think a keen appreciation of it. If they're that funny, they can also see the absolute opposite side of it. And they all have wonderfully melancholic. I've noticed it in every great comedian I've seen. They carry weight with them. They carry a weight of thought, weight of melancholy, and it brings to a part like Professor Waldman a wonderful sense of mystery and gravitas, and also there's an extra kind of, you know, funny kick that it's a great funny man playing a small but very serious role. It was fun to see him disguise himself, to put the teeth in that changed his face.
And the hair, the
so a lot of people
hair.
don't actually know it's him.
I didn't know it was him until I read the credits. This is a scene from Frankenstein. It's actually Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Why is it that way? Is it because there was a problem with title, or you wanted to say this is different, or what?
Both, actually. I think Universal own the title Frankenstein, and in any case, ours, I think, is legitimately, I hope, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Okay. Set this up for me. This is a scene where they say, "I can't help you."
Well, this is where Henry Clerval, Tom Hulse, puts to Victor the arguments for not being involved in this scheme.
This obsession.
Yeah, this obsession, and this his explicit desire now to cheat death, to recreate life.
Here it is. Any risk worth taking here? Because you're first out of the chute. No, you're second, actually. Dracula's been out. Now you come, and then Vampire's coming out with Tom Cruise. I mean...
Well, it's interesting that, you know, people are doing these Gothic tales.
Now, you say Gothic rather than horror.
I don't particularly know why I say that, actually. I mean, I'd say Gothic because it encompasses more than just the modern horror movie genre.
Which is Stephen King-ish?
Well, I think that's a separate thing as well. But I mean, I suppose I'm thinking about the B picture side of it, which in itself is a separate genre and very delicious.
Which is the Boris Karloff Frankenstein?
I would say it's become that. It's become that. Those are classic films, but all the parodies of like Frankenstein in Outer Space, Frankenstein, meets Abbott and Costello, all those kind of things.
And it's even a term of art now when you think of somebody as being...
Exactly. But I think that, I hope that, there's a kind of, that both pictures of Vampire and Frankenstein help each other. It'd be nice if people want to go see Gothic tales and see both.
I want to talk about other things, but tell me, this is Frankenstein. This is a scene. Set this up in which it's alive is the word.
Well, this is where, at the end of a feverish operatic creation process, we believe that the creature appears to be alive and then is very clearly dead, or is he? Victor Frankenstein isn't sure.
Let me take note of a couple of other things. This opens around the country when? Today, Friday?
November 4th.
November 4th. All right. Here's the other thing. It is the notion that Public Enemies here, a play that you wrote back when you were, 27, 28, when you just began to put together Renaissance. Yeah. It's in New York. Your first time that a New York audience will get to see you as a playwright.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited about that. It's at the Irish Arts Centre up on West 55th Street, and it's a terrific production, so I'm told. I'm about to see it. But I saw some early rehearsals, which were very encouraging, and it was nice to see the play out and about again, because it's raw, but it's full of energy, and indeed it's full of a love for the movies, which I was encouraged to remember when I went back to it, because it was before I'd even thought of.
It's about there's sort of an obsession with the James Cagney character.
Sure, it's a guy who's in love with James Cagney, starts to impersonate him, and then dangerously becomes obsessed not only with the man himself, but what he does in the movies, so that he becomes something of a revenger himself.
You must have felt a little sorrow this week because to read a little bit about you, maybe when you're growing up in Belfast and then you moved to London later, is the first film that sort of caught your attention was Birdman of Alcatraz with Burt Lancaster.
Indeed.
And he just died.
Yeah, he was such a wonderful actor.
And what you liked about him was that it seemed so natural?
Yeah, he had a wonderful sweetness in that. Power, he's always been a powerful, athletic performer, but he had such range, actually, and you saw it both in that film, where there was tremendous tenderness, and yet you still felt that the man was in there for a reason, you know, he wasn't in prison by accident. But I loved him in that, in the same way as I loved the seediness and sinister quality that he brought to a picture like Sweet Smell of Success. And the dash that he had in pictures like Trapeze, you know, that circus picture with him and Tony Curtis, I think it was. They were great. Those wonderful 50s movies.
Now, was it those movies that made you say, I want to be an actor?
I think retrospectively they did. I mean, as I watched them, I didn't think it was remotely possible. I didn't know where to start.
Growing up in Belfast, you didn't know a lot of actors.
No actors at all. I mean, I didn't know until I was about 15 or 16 how you could even begin to go about doing it. And then someone said, well, you can. You know, there are places called drama schools where you train. You know, there are places where they make these films. I mean, I'd made a list of names. I thought, what are these places on the ends of films? Burbank, California, Culver City. Oh, I'd love to see those places.
Culver City,
you know,
yes.
And,
well, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure anymore. But then they were magical names. You know, they were as magical as the stars themselves.
What was it like for you? Your parents were not in the theaters. Your father was a carpenter, was he?
Indeed, yeah.
And your mother worked at home, or did she work outside?
Well, she worked out. She worked in shops. She worked all over the place.
I mean, was there because you were Irish, some storytelling tradition that sort of found its way into your consciousness?
I think so, because we had a large family, lots of brothers and sisters of my parents, so I had lots of cousins, aunts and uncles. Everybody visited everybody, and, you know, you'd end up, a little family visit would turn into more people would turn up, and then suddenly the room would be full of people, the Guinness would come out, and somebody would start singing, you know, usually Danny Boy, just to get a good old melancholic Irish thing going. And then everybody seemed to have a turn, you know, they seemed to have like a poem or a monologue, or usually songs, but unafraid, unabashed, you know, people would come out with it, not shy, and it was very vivid, you know, it was good entertainment.
Yeah. You've written your own you wrote an autobiography when you were 28 called In the Beginning, or The Beginning, or something like that. Which was it? The Beginning. You have, clearly, when you write, when you only have 20 years to write about, you go back and you look at the beginning and what fueled you. When you do that, I mean, do you come away with some sense that it imbued beyond storytelling with a love of language and words and the sense of what you could do with words?
Well, I think yes, I think there's some truth to that. I also think that from where I came from, there was a sense of a mix that I've noticed is part of what I do, of whatever you'd like to call it, high culture and low culture. I noticed this in Dublin. Whenever you're in Dublin, you meet people anywhere, in a pub or on the street, people talk to each other in a place like Dublin. They do in Belfast, but even more so in Dublin. And, you know, you can talk to people about a football match, and you can talk to people about politics, you can talk to people about opera. They know what's going on. There's a kind of there's a mingling.
Are you saying that there's no high and low, that in fact it's just...
I think that there's an appreciation of art and storytelling, songs, music that's absolutely interwoven into the culture, that that isn't stuck with this elitism that I think is distinct in Ireland from Britain itself.
Yeah. There are some who will argue that many, and maybe you're one of them, count yourself among them, the notion that Shakespeare has become high culture, and it didn't used to be that way. That in fact it was something else, because it dealt with all the themes that we're all relate to. We're having to do with the highest emotions of life and death and killing and murder and you know.
I think that as soon as somebody dies who is a great writer, there starts to be a process where they are appropriated by people who will then consider themselves experts, you know, who will start to turn this working playwright, this popular working playwright who owns shares in a theatre, who was a businessman, as well as a local politician in his town of Stratford. They start to turn him into an industry and into a kind of icon. And that happens with all the... Charles Dickens, you know, also similarly revered. You know, this was one of the great popular writers who wrote for serialized.
Wrote soap operas, some would say.
Exactly, and he wrote sort of in penny magazines. You get an installment every week. So these great novels, you know, they were the product of a guy knocking it off, you know, at midnight. He happened to be a
working
genius.
Yes, exactly, because he needed the money to
pay the bills.
These and get guys some food and shelter.
They were realists, and they would be amused. They'd be very amused at the way, at the reverence, at the high church attitude that attends their work from people who will tell you that you will enjoy this because it's good for you. And it's a pretty frightening attitude, I find.
You made your way, your family moved. Why did they move to England?
Well, my father was working away a lot, so he was in England and coming back very infrequently, and I think that was creating a strain on the marriage. And my mother was pregnant with my sister at a time when the troubles really were starting to hit our street in a big way. So he got an offer of a house in England, and we moved with some great regret, it has to be said, but we moved, and it was pretty traumatic because we went from a place where everybody knew us and we knew them to a place where we were pretty much alone.
But there's no doubt in your mind that you're Irish.
There isn't. I mean, I start to see it now in the work, now that there is a sort of bunch of things to look at. You see, whatever you like to call it, a Celtic imagination. I kind of just listen to the music in these films. It's got a kind of size to it. In fact, it's got sort of Celtic melodies. It's got Irish and Scots melodies. Patrick Doyle, who writes it, and I are both.
It's also powerful. I mean, Patrick Doyle. You and Patrick Doyle wrote it?
Oh no, but wouldn't have done the pictures together. He obviously writes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, you do music too. There,
I don't do the music. No, but we talk a lot about that, and we push each other in the same direction, which is enjoying that kind of that tradition and that visceral tradition.
Well, then, how did you react when you get to England and there are people who don't fancy young men who speak with that?
Well, it was
Celtic.
Yeah, it was pretty rough when we first came.
And you'd be better off if you changed your diction.
Yeah, sure. Well, and then in the end you do, because you're 9, 10 years old, and you suddenly think the only way to fit in is to try and sound like everybody else. And I think that creates a kind of, an uncomfortably split personality for a while. That doing this work actually over the last 5, 6, 7 years is kind of resolved, and sort of creatively I've come into my personality as opposed to hiding behind it or thinking you've got to be something else.
When you look at when you all of a sudden said, "Gee, maybe I can get involved in this acting thing," is it a small leap to say I want to get to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts?
Well, at least with a place like that, you can write and you can get the prospectus, And
is that what you did?
I did, and you just send off whatever it was. It was about £8.50, I think. What would that be about? I don't know, $15 to enrollment audition fee. And in those days, that anybody could kind of go in. So in any one year, there'd be 2,000-3,000 people auditioning for 20 odd places. You just go, you hold cross your fingers. I was prepared to go through all the drama schools. There are about a dozen very good ones there, and I thought, but I didn't apply to all of them at once. You
started with the Royal Academy?
Well, I started because I thought, I don't want to waste all this money, So let's start where we'd love to go. So I went through the long.
Yeah, you know what they said about your audition?
Well, they were pretty leery at the.
Well, they said the execution was terrific, but there was no soul.
Yeah, he was tough on me. Yeah, this was a guy called Hugh Cropwell, who was the principal, who since then has retired and has worked with me on every project I've ever done, and is similarly brutal. He's a wonderful influence to have, and he turned me from a performer into an actor. I was somebody.
What's the difference?
Well, I think there's a relish for just sort of showing off and just having a facility for, putting on a show, and then there's which is a great thing in itself, but it's distinct from acting. Where I think you've got to become, at least appear to become someone else, and you have to put your personality at the service of someone who might have a quite different personality if you want to be an actor who can do many different things. And in a sense also you've got to give even more of yourself. You have to open up your heart, mind, soul. You've got to be as available to the writer and to those words as possible, and that's a painful process sometimes, because you think you're doing it, as available to the writer and to those words as possible, and that's a painful process sometimes, because you think you're doing it, as available to the writer and to those words as possible, and that's a painful process sometimes, because you think you're doing it. You often trick yourself into thinking you're doing it, but what you're in fact presenting is what you think is effective and rather good about you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to show all the horrible bits as well, because that's what people are made up of, and Hugh Cropwell helped me to sort of,
And who else was there with you? Who was around? And who else was there with you? Who was around? Other actors?
There? Well, in my time, just after me was Ralph Fiennes. Christ, who else was?
Whatever happened to Ralph Fiennes?
Yeah, whatever happened to him? What a career! It's just he's got to be worried now. And who else? God, there was a whole generation of us. I mean, at the same time, at other drama schools, there were Dan Day-Lewis and, you know, and Gary Oldman and people like that.
People who probably had applied to the Royal Academy and didn't get in.
Or maybe chose not to go, or went to other places. I mean, it's a great drama school, but there are other...
No, my point is really is a critique of the Royal Academy and the process rather than Daniel Day-Lewis and those that might not have got in.
Exactly.
So, but at some point, what did you do while you were there?
What
did you do on the theater, on stage?
Yeah, it was all theatre work.
No, I mean, what did you do?
Oh, I mean, the plays, we did, well, I did Hamlet in my last term. I remember playing an outrageous...
But you were like 21 or 22
20, then. Yeah, I was 20 then, yeah. But we were all 20 playing 20 and playing...
And you play Hamlet one night and then...
We played him in blocks of time, but we played lots of different parts. And you know, in your final 2 terms, there would be, in a group of 20, there'd be a play where, you know, a couple of people would get the leads and other people would walk on.
And you left to form Renaissance?
I left
your own, an actors' theatre company.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little later on, and it was really a reaction to having been with the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is a big, marvellous institution in many ways, but, you know, at its worst at that time, very bureaucratic and very much... you know, resisting that sort of Mickey Rooney thing that is in my blood of just, hey, you know, we can do the show right here. You know, that's, I loved those pictures where they did that. We can do the show right here. And suddenly we'll hire the school gymnasium, get some of the guys to come over the local band. And suddenly there's like 5,000 people in the band that they could never have got from anywhere in this enormous studio.
Is there a part of you then that just says, basically, I mean, you have this wonderful quality of, you'll fire off a letter to almost anybody. I mean, there's the story when you were going to do, maybe it was Hamlet, I don't know, somebody you were going to do, and you fired off a letter to Prince Charles.
Yeah. Henry V.
Just when you were going to do Henry V on film or on stage?
On stage, yeah.
And so tell me the story.
Well, I knew someone who knew him, and I'd been frustrated in rehearsal at not being able to talk to anyone. It seemed very...
You didn't understand what a royal was like?
Yeah, well, it seemed to me that anybody who was regal and who had an enormous position of influence, if not actual power, would be uniquely fitted to just take a view on it, not to tell me what they felt particularly, but to... you know, to comment on you know, the various things racing through my mind about Henry V, and to just confirm this sense of isolation and this sense of the weight of responsibility, especially if you're, you know, in his case, particularly attached to a great line of you know, historic figures and tradition. It's a unique perspective, and you see it in the demeanour of such a person. You hear it in their voice. You see it in their eyes.
You hear the weight of the office, sort of?
I think so. I think that you see the melancholy. I think that... Do you notice that? I don't know whether that's true with politicians, for instance. I mean, would you say that... Do you see a different look in Bill Clinton's eye? You just see that there's more stuff going on. You know,
I mean, not only that, but everybody will begin to take pictures. And with Clinton it'll be easy because I think his hair has changed since he's been in office, so that's sort of a discernible sign. But in every presidency you begin, and the only person it didn't seem to be true for was Ronald Reagan. Yeah. And some will say because he looked at the presidency a little bit different, and he delegated everything, and it didn't weigh as heavily on him, maybe because of his experience had been different. And, you know, Ronald Reagan once said, I don't know anybody who hasn't been an actor how they could ever handle this job.
Really?
Did you know that? And his biography, I mean, one of his biographies is written, the title is Ronald Reagan, The Presidency, A Role of a Lifetime, by a very distinguished Washington Post reporter. The interesting thing about Reagan is he didn't look like, but other presidents you can notice. You can see how that weight of the office has a discerning impact, Jimmy Carter, on their physical features.
And also in the way they move, in the rhythm of their bodies.
It slows, or...
There's somehow, there's a measured thing to it. And also you notice how there's a difference in the concentration span, and you see that they can be talking to you and looking away, and you just, as it were, see them go away into the void, even though they're engaging with you.
You would watch this much better than more than I would, but today, on the banks of the Jordan River, they signed the accord between Israel and Jordan. And the president was there, and representatives of Russia were there, and Prime Minister Rabin was there, and Foreign Secretary and King Hussein, and all these people were there. And you could see them. They were sitting there, and they rolled out this carpet thing right there on the banks of the Jordan, in the Jordan River Valley. And as they did, all the people were sort of sitting like this, and it was so interesting to see the different body language, because Clinton was there, but Rabin was almost like much more, who was one of the older men there, but had a kind of athletic body image about the way.
Yes,
I mean, and they were all sort of, he looked younger even in terms of body language than some of the others who were there.
Yes. Well, sometimes people, I think, do that. They're still a fighter somehow,
Yeah, exactly.
aren't they?
There's that.
They're
And
still
this is a
fighter.
guy who was a general, and
Yeah,
and all
exactly.
that
And
stuff.
also, some people in that kind of position, I think, start to assume what they believe to be those characteristics that give them weight. So they start to, as it were, adopt a kind of
Well, that was George Patton.
grave tone.
Patton did that in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, Patton, and they said, imagined in his mind what a general should be like, and he became that.
Yes,
Whether it was the
very
pearl-handled, whatever, and the way he walked, and the way he.
Yes, and just the whole rhetorical style, and it's very fascinating to watch that. Henry V, of course, was quite brilliant at that. He, in the St. Crispin's Day speech, he gives one of the most moving tricks, if you like, in literature, which is to convince men who are outnumbered 10 to 1 that it's the greatest possible thing they could ever do, to walk into 30,000 Frenchmen with no chance of winning. Because if you die, we few.
Yeah.
We happy few.
Happy band.
We band of brothers.
Yeah.
For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, be he ne'er so base. Won't it be great? We'll get killed. We'll be savaged. We'll be in mud. Our limbs will be hacked off, and it'll be great because back home they'll tell stories. Yeah. But he puts his finger on a kind of moment in history. He ennobles people with that, and it's a fascinating kind of paradox because. In his case, you feel that he believes it as he says it, but he knows also that it's a good idea that he does say it because he does need them to get the chance.
Yes.
So there's a kind of double thing going on.
Now, does a director do this?
I think you've got to inspire people. You've got to get people behind you. You've got to create the conditions where they want to do it and where they feel part of it and where they would really give their last ounce of energy for you. And you, I think, have to know that you do that for them ahead of the game. And I lead from the front, when doing something like this, because it's the best way. By example, is to
to lead from the front in directing means what? Unless you're also a performer.
I think in my case it means getting up there first in the morning, being prepared. Having taking an interest in people. I think Robert De Niro. I said to him, "What do you think is the most important thing for a director to have?" Because he just directed A Bronx Tale beautifully, and he said, "Well, I have a lot of experience with this. He said, the one thing that I've noticed is that the finest gift is to be able to produce an atmosphere in which people can be happy." He said, "I have worked with no shouter or screamer or aggressive or macho, directors who have got better work than those who have." Taken care to create an atmosphere and be aware of people, have a kind of social, I don't mean go out with people, but a social relationship with people, that is the circumstance under which the best work is done. And I agree with that.
He also said about you, in a comment about you, he said that the thing that he enjoyed working about you is that you understood the way actors work. No, this is what struck me. He said you understood the way actors talk. And the way they work, and somehow that may be. Do you feel that somehow what edge does it give you?
Well, I don't know whether I do understand it, but what I do know is that I love actors and I love acting. I think that it is it's a very scary thing to do. I mean, I think it's one of the bravest of the arts. I know that we can be vain and greedy and insecure and self-indulgent and all the things that are easily mockable, but also someone like Robert De Niro, a great actor, is one of the bravest artists. It's his voice, his body, his soul, his everything. It's all on show, and every time and very regularly you are judged. And you need to be very brave, especially if, like him, you risk different roles. Here's a man, a few people said when his name came up for this, what are we going to get, some urban New York thing? He's going to sound like, you talk to me, there's going to be all this kind of stuff. Not a bit of it. He came in and you just don't even think about that, You don't even think about that. So it's... I love that. I mean, I admire
Robert
it.
Altman was here one night, and he said to me, I said, "Do you want to be an actor? Could you ever thought, could you?" And because he obviously is respected. He's a director that actors like to work with.
Sure.
Gives them room and a lot of other things. But he said, it would scare me to death. He said, I mean, to imagine what it's like to stand up and say to a camera or to an audience, I'm going to make you believe that I am Henry V. I'm Henry V. That's what you've got. Is that what it's about?
Well, it's certainly, it's good to hear him say it because I think it's true. It is terrifying. It is terrifying. It's a wonderful courage that they have, and I think, when I see it work well, it's absolutely thrilling. I love working with actors, and it's fantastic when, like Robert did and the other actors on this picture, when they give themselves over to you and to the atmosphere that you've created. It seems to me you're a part of creation happening. You're right in the middle of a piece of art occurring. There's nothing more thrilling to be part of that.
It is said about you two things that almost are contradictory. Here is one. And I think came from a number of people who have talked about you and say he's not afraid of failing. You'll take a large risk, and you have done that in terms of to accomplish what you have done at the ages that you have done it, in terms of being, what, 33, 4, 5, whatever you're 34, right?
33.
33. All right, to accomplish all of that now, you've clearly had to believe, or at least being willing to leap into the fray, right?
Sure. I mean, I think I just feel so strongly that we're here for such a short time that there is, it's painful to be criticized, it's disappointing if things are failures, but the doing of it is what is the important thing. It really is. Now, I put my heart and soul into Frankenstein. I hope it's a great success. But in the 2 years that I've worked on it, it's given me far more than I've given it, and we've had a fantastic time, up and down, extremes of emotion, sometimes depressing, sometimes tough, sometimes ecstatically happy, but it's been fantastic. And,
there were moments in which you got up in the morning and said, this is a disaster. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm not going to be able to do what I thought I was going to do. My God, I've got all this talent here and all this money here. And Jesus Christ, I don't have a film.
Sure, I mean, and people always assume you don't do that, but the history of any kind of endeavor like this is that, and in my case, it's absolutely true. You have those moments all the time. You have moments where you want something, you want your mother to write a note and send it in and say, he's sick today, he can't come in, and you want to weep in your bed for the rest of the day and never come out.
But here it also, and the director of the National Theater, and there's comparisons that I know are unfair to you, and you hate them. It is the notion of you're the next Olivier, or you're the next Orson Welles, and all of that because you do so many things, and because there's similarities, and because at an early age you took on, you had the balls to go on to do Henry V on film. A lot of people said, why couldn't he go do something else other than Henry V? And many other people had shied away from doing it because they thought that Olivier's performance would stand there, and who would dare create a comparison with Olivier? And you marched right into that, yes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that those things, the Shakespeare, for instance, belongs to the world, and I remember speaking to one of Laurence Olivier's daughters a little while ago, and she said, I wish my dad could have met you because he would have so approved of all of that.
And how bad do you wish you could have met him?
Well, I'd love to. I'd love to, but it's just one of those things. He certainly has inspired me and so many others for his fearlessness.
That's what I was going to get to. That was the point. On the other hand, you have this sense of, look, if I'll give it my best, I'll make sure that I'll work as hard as any man alive can work, any woman alive can work, and if it doesn't work, then I'll be depressed, but I'll move on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But somebody else and talking about this comparison, and I think it was Richard Eyre, the director of the National Theater, said, with great respect for you, said you were an enormously talented, decent guy, but that Olivier was more reckless. Do you think that's true?
I think that he had an amazing capacity for for that dare, for that extra mile that he would go, where he would be in performances outrageous, and in films, daring. I mean, reckless. I don't know that Olivier was ever truly reckless. I think that he had great courage, but he was a tremendous technician. I'd say he could fly like the Niro can fly, like Wells could fly. I'd like to think that I try and make the conditions both in directorial and acting where there is that room where you prepare, where technically you've put everything in you can, in order to just maybe have the luxury of a moment where it's unpredictable, it's surprising, and for a moment some piece of electricity goes whizzing round and a performance goes straight to the heart and soul of everybody who watches it and moves them and changes their lives. I'd like to think, I don't think it happens very often, but I'd like to think everybody has the chance to do that, if only their imaginations are receptive to it, and if they have the work to go alongside and support it.
Is there, I think your wife said this, Emma Thompson said once about you, said, look, he sometimes will wake up in the morning saying, by God, they're going to find out. They're going to find out that I've gotten away with all this stuff. I've done it really well, but I've gotten away with it. I just lucked out every time. Yeah. Any of that, or have you gotten beyond that? You've done enough now. There's a body of work in which you are comfortable with your own skills and talent to know something about their reach.
I think you try to, get a little more comfortable with with dropping the kind of energy draining, agonizing that produces. It's always part of the artistic condition. You always feel, I think, that you're not good enough, that it's all a bit of a fake.
When was the last time you saw a performance and said, my God, that person is somewhere else, is in another zone?
God, well, I'd say that I find myself saying that pretty regularly.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do, because
with De Niro in this performance,
yeah,
or with
certainly, yeah, certainly. I mean, I really enjoy it when people are very good, and I always think it makes me. The years drop away, and you think, God, how do they do that? How do they learn all those lines?
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah, but there is. I mean, what I don't understand about you is that all those lines are in your head. I mean, I mean, there is an encyclopedia of Shakespeare.
Yeah,
because of what? Because of a love of language, and therefore you remember that which somehow, there's some recent study that came out and said, things that have an emotional connection we remember more than any other thing. That's where our memories of childhood and other things. It is the emotional connection will drive it deeper into the recesses of our memory.
I think that makes sense, and I think that it...
and Shakespeare has the capacity, the words have a capacity to make that connection.
And it nourishes you, yes, I think you're absolutely right, and yeah, that's where it comes from with me, plus a kind of enthusiasm and a sense of wonder as well.
I got a couple of things to do. One, Frankenstein was important for you also to tell the story of the obsession about love.
Yeah, I think
Is that in the book?
I think it's not so much in the book. It's implicit in the book.
This is Elizabeth and
It's
Victor.
a little more explicit in Shelley's own life, in Mary Shelley's life, who had a life really directed by passionate love. I mean, she eloped with her superstar poet husband when she was 16, who wooed her on the tomb of her dead mother, who died giving birth to her, and the sort of search for love.
16 when she did that?
Yeah, 16 when she
Well, did
eloped.
she have to wait for his wife to die, for his wife to die first? Or something?
Well, he was married with 2 kids. His wife committed suicide shortly after that. She wrote this book when she was 19 and possessed by this story in the company of these strange people in this extraordinary summer on Lake Geneva.
Lord Byron was there?
Lord Byron, Claire Clairmont, her half-sister, who was having an affair with Byron and then possibly an affair with her husband.
Yeah.
Percy
Shelley.
Bysshe Shelley, the other, the not yet famous poet actually, and she plus a mad Dr. Polidori who kept them all on illegal substances.
I'm out of time. Thank you. What's next for you?
A holiday.
Holiday?
Yeah.
Where do you go?
God knows. I can only see towards the end of getting this movie released, and all I know is I'm going to stop for a little while and just catch my breath.
Great to have